of May 2025. We'll start the meeting with KARAKIA.
Whakatakataho ki te uru, whakatakataho ki te tonga, kia makinakina, ki uta, ki mataratara, ki tai, ihi aka ana te arakura, he teo, he huka, he ho hu, ti hei mauri ora.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chief Executive. All right, councillors, we've got a reasonable agenda in front of us, and we do have two deputations for the council to start off with. So just as we've got others in the room, can we have you take us through the health and safety?
Kia tātou. In the event that emergency will or should arise, there will be a siren and we will be asked to vacate the premises. In the event that that happens, please exit through the main chamber doors, out through the fire exit doors onto your right, onto the footpath, and carefully at the crossing across the street to the assembly area in the park. If anything else should happen where you require assistance, please let a member of staff know and we'll be happy to help you. And hope you have a good day. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you very much. All right, as I said, we've got two deputations before us this morning, councillors. Each of these individuals have 5 minutes to speak to council. So we've got Trevor Simpson and Graham PINNELL. Their deputations were included in the agenda pack. So I'll invite Trevor Simpson forward. There we go. Yeah.
Good morning, and thank you for giving me time to speak today. I speak to represent many concerned ratepayers in the Waikato region regarding the establishment of the Wairau Co-Governance Committee and the lack of transparency about its decision-making powers. For myself, I'm a member of the primary land users group called Plug, and I'm also a volunteer representative of landowners in the Lower Waikato on the Council's Flood Protection and Drainage Committee. I want to take my submission as read and talk to you about two key themes. Number one, co-governance versus co-management. As a ratepayer, I maintain there is a huge difference between co-governance and co-management. The Auditor General defines governance as the system by which an organisation is directed or controlled. Now, the JMAs between iwi and Council concerning the Waikato River are joint management agreements. They are established for co-management of concerns around river issues. However, the Wairau Co-Governance Committee is not established under a JMA. It is a construct of Council, and as such, it is a political decision as to what it is called and what its powers are. Now, you can split hairs in legal opinions about whether or not this should be called a co-governance committee because iwi have joint decision-making on recommendations to full council. I understand council has received a legal opinion which states there is no reason why an identity cannot be described as co-governance, even if it does not hold the ultimate decision-making role. But I say to you that this legal opinion does not resonate with the general public, many of whom interpret co-governance to mean that iwi are being given joint control over Council's policy on fresh water. This, I submit, is a bad mistake because co-governance has become an emotionally charged word. It may encourage iwi to believe they have more power than what they do, and it alarms other stakeholder groups who rely on fresh water for their livelihoods about what decisions Council could be making behind closed doors. So in naming the Wairau Committee, my submission says that Council should err on the side of caution and remove the word co-governance. Number two, lack of transparency over stakeholder input. Water is the #1 issue in our region. It dominates the economy, the culture and the future of our region. Anytime council forms a committee which has decision-making powers over water rights, it must be inclusive. But to date, the farming community and other stakeholders have largely been left out of meaningful input into the freshwater policy review. We are particularly alarmed to see that iwi may be given power to decide who and what stakeholders are getting input into the next stage. I refer here to page 33 of the Wairaua Committee agenda in April, which states council staff will be working closely with the joint iwi working party to RAUPATU to co-design and implement a revised sector engagement approach for this catchment in April and May. There is no mention of engagement co-design with sector groups such as Waikato farmers or other major land owners like Plug. In conclusion, we are concerned to see that council is making a political decision to set up this Wairaua committee, which appears to give iwi preemptive input into freshwater management in this region. Political decisions have political implications. That's why we urge the council to delay the formation of this Wairaua committee until proper shareholder consultation has been undertaken. Now look, I'm nearly 72 years old. I've been involved in all sorts of things and farmed 1,200 dairy cows at Rangireary. What you see is what you get with me sitting here. At your council meeting last month, you tried to formalise the terms of reference for this Wairaua committee and couldn't because of a procedural issue. I have talked to many people and have read the terms of reference and the Wairaua committee meeting agenda. I am disillusioned with this council. You as a group were put into your position here to represent your ratepayers and are expected to make decisions on what is best for the region and its ratepayers. On the formation of the Wairaua committee, I believe you have failed all of those voters who put their trust in you. Decisions being made at multiple public excluded meetings. Really? Appointing 5 elected members for the committee without public input on who the public thinks
Trevor,
is best for the
that's
job.
5 minutes.
1 minute. This committee,
That's 5 minutes, Trevor.
I've got
Thank
half
you.
a page.
Thank you. We've got your deputation, and if you want to provide us copies of that, that will be fine. Thank you very much for that.
This appointed
Great, we've got a copy, so we'll
another 15
distribute that.
seconds would have finished.
We'll distribute that. Thank you. Sorry?
Second that. Can I move that Mr. Simpson be given 1 more minute, please?
Do I have a
So, but
second for that?
Chair.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Mr. Simpson.
Thank you, councillors. Appointing 5 elected members for the committee without public input on who the public thinks is best for the job. This committee will dominate the future of our region, and ratepayers demand protection from political recommendations going to council from this committee. You have not delivered on that, and that's what your ratepayers expect for their vote. You must delay this business and consult with your ratepayers because you lot have lost their trust in democracy. So I'm willing to meet with any councillors to discuss the way forward for this committee. And it only involves 2 things, and that is the Settlement Act and democracy. Thanks.
Are there any questions for Mr. Simpson?
Minutes.
Yes.
So Mahuta.
Kia ora. Tēnā koe, Mr. Simpson. Thank you for your time this morning and articulating your views to council. I'm sure the constituent members in your area, including myself, have all taken heed. Wanting, in terms of your conversation about this committee, you happy to that iwi in that room having that conversation as well?
Absolutely.
Or would you just like to speak to elected members,
Absolutely.
noting that you don't recognise their mandate?
No, it's a joint management arrangement, and that's
Ka pai. No, just want to see what
That's where we
progress
want to
looks
be.
like.
we want
Kia
to
ora.
be a joint management arrangement.
Kia ora.
Councillor Dunbar Smith.
Yes, just in terms of consultation with farming sector or plug or people like that, how could that be better managed, given that you feel unlistened to at the moment?
Well, I think first and foremost, things have to be delayed so that any consultation can take place. And then once we have a system in place, we can. Like at the moment, it doesn't appear to be any consultation. Everything seems to be done behind closed doors, which is not particularly democratic. But you have a system of, like any plan change one, whatever, where you go out to everybody involved in the region for consultation. And so you have terms of reference, you have a reason for forming this committee. That needs to go out to everybody so they can understand why you're trying to form this. Is it actually required? Because we have a system already of co-management to do with the issues to do with the Waikato and Waipa rivers and catchment. We have an established system already. So why are we spending more effort and more money on a committee which may not be required if everybody has their input into the existing system? And so the council has a process to liaise with various groups. So we're just asking for time so that council can go out. For instance, we've got an orange lake up our way, Lake Waikari, and the council's spending like $1 million consulting with everybody over the 12 months, even the local school children, to find out a way to improve the lake. But here we have a committee, which is the most important committee trying to be formed in the future of our region, and not a dollar being spent on consultation. Everything done behind closed doors. Everything last month. If they hadn't had that procedural error last month, this would have all gone through and nobody would have known anything about it.
I understand that.
That's not particularly democratic.
Thank you.
Two more questions before we move on to our next deputation. Councillor Kneebone.
Thanks. Hi, thanks, Trevor. So just with regards to the committee, the bit we didn't traverse the other day that I thought of afterwards was, if we dissolve this committee, if we didn't have it, we default to the 5 JMA committees. The powers that this committee has and the powers that those JMA committees is effectively the same. But do you want us to go and revisit the way the terms of reference for the other JMA committees are written and the powers that those committees have?
No.
Thank you.
No. What I want is, at the moment, coming up to the Wairoa, my pronunciation may be wrong, coming up to the committee, we have the JMAs over here. Over on this side, we have 5 elected, appointed members representing all other ratepayers. Now, where is their lead into discussions from sector groups or whatever? The JMAs lead into the iwi side. There's nothing leads into the 5 elected members, and nothing. So where are they getting their mandate to come to these meetings with stuff or requests? It's a ladder with only one leg.
Yeah, look, I can't add much more. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Councillor Knuckle.
Thanks, and I'm mindful of time, Chair, so very happy to chat to you after or any time about this as well further. I just thought I had heard you say you'd read quite a few things in regards to the JMAs and the terms of reference and such, and you say a lot about behind closed doors. My understanding is that it's purely the negotiations around some things that end up with, so the negotiation stage is a part where we might have a public excluded section, but have you read the open documents that led to the formation of the committee, the Waiora committee?
I've read
the reason for that.
I've read there was a document that had the terms of reference plus I think the committee agenda, which is a lot of background in.
I think there might be some other open agendas that might give a bit more background, which I could help find.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Simpson. Sorry,
You indicated
said I was going to take 2.
I just wanted a simple
2.
question. If I could put it to Mr. Simpson, that Trevor, you've got my phone number and you are in regular contact, and we exchange views quite regularly. Is that not fair to say? So the channels are open for communication.
Yeah, I'm willing to talk to anybody.
Yeah, but we regularly talk.
Yep.
And, yeah, the lines of communication are open between you and the council through me and others.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Pinnell.
Just before I start, yeah, some old fellas in the back of the room are having trouble listening, so yeah, something like that would be fine. Thank you.
Righto. Thank you, Graham. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks, Pamela, and thanks for allowing us some time to speak here. Look, I've tabled something before. I hope I can take it as read. And also table this. I've got 10 slides. I hope I'll try and get through them in 5 minutes. The most important one is at the end. So I'd like to talk about the Waiora Committee as well as Freshwater Policy Review. So next slide, please. Yeah, so first of all, I come from this from a completely different point from the legal opinion you've got. Lawyers do what they do, defend their clients. I'm coming from a good regulatory practice point of view. I've had a wee bit of experience in there, as you will have read in my paper. I think if you don't aspire to good regulatory practice, you're dead in the water, because respect is all important when you're a regulator. You may not be loved, but you need to be respected. Otherwise, the regulator parties will not go along with your desires. Yeah, next slide, please. So what I'm saying is good regulatory practice is totally different to what your legal opinion wants. So if you're a good test that your legal opinion was defensive, any lawyer would tell you any document that represents some sort of legal document requires precise and transparent wording. Your terms of reference doesn't. And I give some reasons there. Trevor touched on some of those before. Next slide, please. So the River Iwi legislation says decide on recommendations that the committee make to council, in terms of reference, construe that to making decisions, joint decision makers, etc., etc. So really, just plainly wrong. Doesn't need an English teacher, let alone a lawyer, to tell you that that's wrong interpretation. Next slide, please. So probably the most standout one, in defiance of what the law says, the terms of reference permits the committee to amend rules governing resource use. So that's really quite freaky sort of stuff for resource users, to have a committee of council making those decisions. Next slide. I'm not so concerned about it's certainly a role that should not be delegated from council. I am still in a muddle as to understand which way you're going with this, because the terms of reference is all over the place. The staff report supporting it in December was all over the place. I take it people are really saying, well, we need to stick to what I've called the default provisions of the River Iwi legislation. If you don't, really consultation is an essential part of it. So co-governance or co-management, the names refer to what Trevor said, the two empowering pieces of legislation that allows this committee to be set up is the Resource Management Act that talks about joint management committees. And the River Iwi legislation has as a purpose statement co-management, not co-governance. And that purpose statement in any legislation, according to the piece of legislation called the Legislation Act, is that provisions in a statute needs to be viewed in light of the purpose statement. So the purpose statement has a preeminent role in the piece of legislation. Now, if that may not sort of result in a legal requirement, but certainly there's a strong indication in those two pieces of legislation that you should be talking about management, and that's if the committee has only powers of recommendation, it should be management, not co-governance. Next slide, please.
All right, Mr. Pinnell, do I have a mover to extend time? We've got a mover in Councillor Kneebone, a second in Councillor Hughes. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Go ahead and continue, but can I encourage you to
Thank you.
pick up the pace? And I understand your last slide is the most important,
Yes.
so the quicker we can get to that, the better.
Thank you. Understand. The dispute resolution process in the terms of reference, traffic light system there, I support the green, the red I don't, and the orange is probably good regulatory practice, but maybe of questionable value. What you've got is a dispute resolution process that goes on and on and on. Next slide. I won't go on anymore. Now, something that is missing out of the terms of reference, and I think should be there, because my early question is, what duties do those committee members have? Do councillors go along wearing their councillor hat, or do they take it off? And what are the duties of the iwi reps? I think it needs to be spelled out, and I think the law makes the duties of every member of that committee to be the same duties as those of councillors. Next slide, please. Council should approve terms of any amendments to the terms of reference. That seems self-evident, but apparently this duty is delegated. A wee bit vague on that. Next one, please.
Is this your last slide?
Must be getting very close to it.
Great.
Okay, two more, I think. So just a request to pause the engagement on the National Policy Statement Freshwater Matters until the new MPS comes out. So I'm just asking for a pause on those aspects that relate to the MPS only. There's a lot of valuable work that could be going on, in my view, on things like mitigation science, and something I've been talking to Mike Scarsbrook about there, for instance. So asking for a pause there. I don't see any legal impediment in pausing that. Next slide, please. Last one. Just like to reflect on the Environment Court process on PC1. And the green really highlights where all the work went into all those days and days and days of Environment Court process. And it's a shame that that wasn't front loaded. And I'm really asking that this emphasis be front loaded into the freshwater policy review, because it's at the nub of it. All the rest, while important, are really stuff around the edges. So the green stuff, it's really all the objectives and policies around water quality. Really, the main thing that was important there is improved water quality. Just a simple concept of how do we improve water quality while on the right-hand side getting effective, practical and affordable rules in place. And the process used by the court was really one of negotiation and refinement. The magic potion in it was that stuff on the top, feeding in the mitigation science, the context of the particular thing the rule was trying to deal with, and the data around it. And once those things were fed in, the results fell out very easily. What got put on the bench were unachievable water targets. Let's not talk about the impossible. The web of objectives and policies got a wee bit of playtime, very little. And the transactional cost, the paperwork side of compliance.
If I can just get you to wrap up, Mr.
Yes, thank you. While it would have been desirable, it was really out of scope. So really, Section 5, balancing the four well-beings were very much core of it, but the real focus went on those green bits.
Thank you, Mr. Pinnell. All right, I'm going to allow 3 questions. I've got 3 lights. So I've got Councillor Clarkson, Councillor Mahuta, and Councillor Dunbar-Smith. Councillor Clarkson.
Thanks, Graham. Thanks for your presentation. Food for thought. Well, I'd like to talk to you in more detail on another occasion, but you did have one slide there in which you said something about being able to make legal change in relation to resource matters. Was that slide, can you find that slide and bang it up?
Just, I'm not with you at this stage.
Yeah,
No.
It was.
Resource use is the next.
No.
Yep.
It was a very short.
Had it, but you lost it. That one.
There it is.
Oh, yeah. Can you explain what you mean by that and give me a real example?
Well, it's simply in my paper, the answer will be quite forthright. Terms of reference permits the committee to amend the rules governing resource use.
It's okay, we could do it offline, but
Yeah,
I'm
let's do
just,
that offline,
I'm
because,
really, I cannot see evidence for that statement is my point.
Well, I'm very happy to give that to you.
Great. Actually, I'll ask for you to put that through to Dave, and that way we can distribute it to all councillors. All right, I've got Councillor Mahuta, and then Councillor Dunbar-Smith, and then we're going to close the deputation. Councillor Mahuta.
Could you go to the last slide, please? Firstly, thank you for your submission and your deputation today. It does help us hear the voice of the community. You do understand that this committee does not have the same brief as the former Plan Change Committee that considered, okay. And you do realise that all the decisions made in that plan change were made by council, not any delegated committees, and that will be the same in this case.
I agree on the first point. The second point depends on what you do with the terms of reference.
The terms of reference currently say that all decisions stemming from that committee are in the provenance of council to make. Do you not agree with that? Or you don't read it the same in the terms of reference? Is that the point of contention?
It's one of the points of contention, yes. Yeah.
Can you point to the terms, where in the terms of reference it says that we've delegated full decision making to the subcommittee? Because as I read it, all recommendations of the subcommittee are considered by council for implementation or not. So sovereignty of, authority over all decisions are held here. Is that not how you read? I'm just worried if the terms of reference aren't clear.
Well, I think asking the question you ask is very relevant. Your interpretation might be different to mine. That indicates to me that the terms of reference need to be very precisely written and explicit and understandable from all parties.
Totally agree. And for the avoidance of doubt, I'm very clear. Council makes the full and final decisions on these matters. It's not delegated to anyone else. Kia ora.
Well, that is not clear in the terms of reference.
Councillor Dunbar-Smith.
Yes, I'd just like to pick up the same point. Could we go back 2 slides? That one. So that's the terms of reference. In your document, you stated that the April minutes of council, terms of reference Te Netanyahu Co-Governance Forum, was decided by delegation. There's a delegated authority to actually change the terms of reference to create a co-governance forum, and then that actually came to council in minutes and was signed off in minutes as a delegated authority. It was not open as a discussion for council. It came through as notes in the minutes.
Sorry.
That aren't actually on the record.
Yeah.
You're quoting something that hasn't been approved by this council as formal minutes of the meeting and bring it into a public space. So me whakatika tātou I tō tātou ake whare mua I te whakapohe reara I tētahi atu. Kia ora.
I'm happy to bring that documentation to council. Yep.
Great, thank you. I'm going
Just
to
a quick one.
give you a very quick one, Councillor Nebo,
Thank you.
and we're going to close it.
I just want to make sure I'm clear, Graham. Are you saying to us in your capacity as a bush lawyer that the advice we're getting from Paul Beverley and other lawyers, that those lawyers that we, dare I say it, are paying a lot of money for, are telling us what we want to hear, not what we need to hear? Because that's what I thought I heard you say. And if that's happening, then I'm a bit worried about it. But
I'm making a comment as ex-member of several Crown regulatory boards. As a matter of good practice, I am not saying that that opinion is wrong from a legal point of view. I'm saying from a good management point of a good regulatory practice point of view, if you follow that, you are a long way short of good regulatory practice.
so if we can't rely on Paul Beverley to give us advice on what a good watertight terms of reference is, where do we go next? And I won't, that's my last question, yeah.
Well, I would have thought there's what I've pointed out in my written submission is quite clear that there's a lot of confusion that you don't really know from that terms of reference, whether to what extent the committee has got decision-making powers and to what extent it's got powers to make recommendations to council. It's clarify what you really want to say. You have to. You've got 2 choices in my book: to default to the mandatory provisions, and there's a legal point whether you can even do this, jump to somewhere where you seem to be going. And if you do that, that's a significant issue for the region that surely requires consultation.
Thank you very much
Public
for that.
consultation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pinnell. Thank you for your deputation. Thanks for taking the time to come and speak to it today.
Thank you.
Kia ora. All right, councillors. We will move on to apologies. Are there any apologies for today? No apologies for early departure? Nope. Okay. All right. Confirmation of the agenda. Do I have a mover to confirm the agenda?
Madam Chair,
Sorry, do I have a mover to it?
Yeah.
Yes, Councillor Clarkson. Do I have a second? Councillor
Chair.
Strange. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Madam Chair, I would like to object to the agenda in its current state. I refer to page 112 of the agenda, namely the reason given for holding the Co-Governance Committee minutes in public excluded. The Ombudsman has already expressed concern about council holding too many meetings in secret without due public input or scrutiny. The submitters here today are victims of this practice, as they are rightly saying that they want a clear, transparent and public process regarding co-governance issues. However, this is being denied by this council. Specifically, I'm referring to item 8.2, whereby the co-governance meeting with the RAUPATU Trust is held in public excluded because it might prejudice or disadvantage negotiations. I do not believe this reason is valid in these circumstances, although I am denied the right to discuss the issue in detail until we are in public excluded. The same issue applies to the recent Waiora Co-Governance Committee workshop, which again was held in public excluded. I object to this level of secrecy, as nothing came up in that workshop that could not have been made in public. The cloak of exclusion that masks these issues is denying ratepayers their democratic rights. So I'm giving notice that I will be making a formal complaint to the Ombudsman about the unnecessary degree of secrecy this council is providing for its co-governance committees. I want to commend our submitters here today for the courage to raise this issue so that it can be publicly discussed. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Dave, did you want to speak to this?
There's a couple of points that I will make at this stage. The first point is that your objection to page 89 of the agenda to enter public excluded, when we get to that portion of the meeting with the motion on the floor, you certainly do have the scope to amend or adjust that the motion before it's put, and to make an item public excluded is ultimately a decision for this council. So by way of resolution, it is collectively the governor's decision to leave or enter public excluded for those items. For a second point, the minutes that are included in the public excluded session in the agenda are from this number of sets of minutes. I'll talk to the Waikato RAUPATU Trust minutes. Those minutes are draft minutes. They're in the agenda for receipt for the members' information only. Generally, our practice has been after the confirmation of the agenda, we often will receive those minutes in the open session. I'll just move forward a little bit. So you'll notice in this resolution that we received the minutes, both open and public excluded, in the open session of the meeting. And the last point that I will make is that understanding order 28.3, when it comes to minutes, the only topic that may be discussed at a subsequent meeting with respect to the minutes is their correctness. Any discussion on the content of those minutes should be referred back to the committee or the source.
Councillor, sorry? Oh, Ollie.
I was just going to say, Madam Chair, in light that there might be a motion coming with regards to removing something from PECs, given that could be an hour or so away, could we have time to have a bit of a think, Marlene, to have a bit of a think about it to make sure that we've got some advice here? And you may be ready to go now, but. Yeah.
Thanks, you. I do have one thing to add to what Dave has just covered off. The public excluded minutes that you're referring to, Councillor Hughes, the substantive decision in those minutes has been released into public. The only, so essentially the minutes are public record.
So my question is then, why are they in public excluded? If they've been released into the public, why should we have them in public excluded?
Matter of process, but just to reassure everybody around the table and the public that might be tuned in, the decision is in the open set of the agenda. There is nothing withheld from the minutes at this stage.
That's not the point. The point is we're not allowed to talk about them because we're in open session, all right? And they're being segregated off into a section of the meeting where nobody else is going to be privy to the information. That's what I'm objecting to.
The motion is in open.
And open.
Yeah, so if you
The-
check
the-
page
This
43,
point,
it's
it's
an
an
open.
extract of the minutes. It's not the minutes. It's an extract of the minutes
What's-
of
what's the
decisions that
resolution?
were made. So those are on page 43 of the agenda.
Yep.
Sorry, I missed the first part of your comments, Councillor Hughes, but it's only an extract that's been released from the minutes.
If you have a look at what else is left in the public excluded minutes, there's nothing other than a repeat of who was in the meeting and that the meeting closed. So you're not missing anything from the public record.
No,
So what I'm hearing is that there is nothing in the minutes beyond the extract that is in open.
the point is, Madam Chair, why are we having this cloak of secrecy? Is it necessary? What are we trying to hide?
We have, as we've just confirmed, there is no additional information in the public excluded minutes beyond what has been reported into open. Is that not what I just
Madam
heard?
Chair, that's not true. Exactly true. I'm not trying to say that you're misleading council. The issue is there is other detail and that is not included in the release. So there is other detail.
So-
To be
So
clear,
from our advisor that there is nothing,
of substance, but there is other stuff in there that's of no real value to anything important. And that's my words, not anybody else's. But because of their insignificance, there's no harm in releasing it in full.
because it's just are you saying it's because it's just the members present or in attendance or staff present? Is that what you
we
want?
want to add
I got no problem.
that the members
We know who the members are.
were present as is already reported in open. Not sure what additional information. Holly, did you have a comment?
Just to reassure council that the information that is contained in the public excluded minutes, the substantive parts has been reported into open. There is no other information in that set of minutes.
Yeah, I don't, sorry, Councillor, or sorry.
Um,
Mr. Chief Executive.
So I think there's some confusion and maybe people are talking past each other. I think that, the committee resolution is on page 43 of the open agenda in full. I think that the point, and I just get clarification from Councillor Hughes that he's making, there are some other things like when the committee, what date it occurred on,
Who was present?
who was present, where the links to that are, and
So reported in the open minute.
And on our website.
is that the concern? Because the procedural thing here, I think has been advised, is they're in public excluded, but because when that committee made a decision to report them into open, the resolution has been reported into open. So I'm just wanting to check the clarification of the concern.
My concern is that we've got these here, which is watermarked, which is public, that tells me it's public excluded. Right?
But it's also on page 43, the resolution.
So why is it public excluded in these documents?
Record keeping.
That's a record, Peter.
Yes, but why should it be in? I can't understand why it needs to be included in public excluded at this council meeting.
Because
That's exactly the point. Why would you try and hide it from people?
So
We've got nothing to hide. We've got it
excuse me,
here.
I'm just going to get a comment from Dave.
I'm just going to make another couple of key points to see if I can clarify this a little bit further. This committee is not a standing committee of council. It is a joint committee with iwi. The committee therefore operates on a joint basis. These are not council minutes. These are the minutes of that committee. And during that committee's meeting, they resolved that the decision and the recommendations be reported into open. The onus is process-wise on that committee to decide what to release. What we are doing here is we are simply receiving their minutes. We're not making any decisions on those minutes. There's no recommendations. And we're not even vetting them for accuracy. They're simply included in the agenda for the members' information of what that committee's activities have been.
That being the case, why are they watermarked as being public excluded? Like if they're open to the public, they should be left as white so that they are open to the public. Like I don't understand why there's a differentiation. The point here I'm trying to get to, this sets a precedent, all right? And it's a precedent that I'm concerned about. We've heard about the concerns today about the ratepayers.
Yes, you've raised your concern. You've raised your concern, Councillor Hughes. As has been clearly articulated, any additional information that was in those PEC's minutes is also in the open minutes. Who was in attendance, the date they met, as well as the details of that motion. All right, we are only receiving these minutes. I'm not going to take any more questions on this. We're going to move on.
Yeah. I just wanted to check with Dave that the agenda is the agenda, because that will happen mid-resolution, that we have enough votes to carry on with the agenda that's in front of us, 1. 2, I'd like to speak.
That motion already carried. Thank you.
Well, you didn't declare it because we went into this conversation.
No, I declared it carried.
I was listening because I was trying to figure out, are we stopping? Are we doing this vote? So you've declared it carried. Fine. Secondly, a member raised taking a matter of council process to the Ombudsman. I'd like to personally know, as a councillor of this quorum, what impact that might have on me and our ongoing processes. And thirdly, with generosity to Councillor Hughes, I note that council proceedings are only being raised when they particularly pertain to working with Māori. And I take exception to that. In the course of this triennium, Councillor Hughes, be consistent. We've set up other committees under PECs. We've set up other special consultancy groups for farmers. So you're going to do one for like, mate. But if you're going to take one to the Ombudsman for that, I'd like to follow all your procedural matters as they occur to only working with Māori. Kia ora.
All right, I do want to move on. We have confirmed the agenda. Disclosures of interest. Any disclosures of interest with regard to matters before council or new additions to the register? Nope. Okay. So,
Just a quick comment. Couple of comments made this morning about that worries me, that maybe councillors might not fully comprehend how we pass Section B recommendations when we go through minutes. That might be something that we want to just reiterate. It's very late in the triennium. That's the point I'm trying to make. And then there's the part about process of how something happens and it has to be recorded and has an action to put something in public. It's just these things shouldn't be happening at this point in the triennium about the processes we have. So look forward to seeing how we might not have that happen next month or the month after.
agreed. All right. Confirmation of minutes for the council meeting, 30th of April, 2025. Do I have a mover? Councillor Strange, a second, and Councillor Clarkson. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right, minutes for confirmation or receipt as followed. Do I have a mover? This is for the Strategy and Policy Committee on the 14th of April, the CERC Committee on the 15th of April, ICMC on 16th of April, CERC Committee on the 6th of May, and then the other two minutes for receipt. Got a mover and Councillor Strange, a second and Councillor Nicol. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
relation to the RAUPATU minutes that went public through the resolution of that committee, at paragraph 4, it's alluded to in relation to the request from Tainui. Can I have an understanding of what has happened with that request?
So I believe we
That was in our email the other day.
there has been correspondence around that.
I'm sorry, the public doesn't know that. So we know what the email, and I've had a long email correspondence. So I think it's incumbent on us to advise, and that's why I am asking a question. What has happened with that request? And I understand, preempting that there are matters in public excluded at an upcoming meeting. But could I have it put on record, please, what has happened with that request from the Joint Management Committee?
Molly.
Kia ora, thank you for your question, Councillor Smith. So the paragraph that you're referring to in this paragraph is in the public agenda, relates to a piece of work to be undertaken to explore the potential to broaden the geographical scope of the joint management agreement with Waikato Tainui. This JMA has been under review for quite some time, kicked off last year, and actually kicked off with a council decision to set it as a CE KPI. So that's the inception of the JMA review. We have gone through a number of processes to collaborate with councillors, with Waikato Tainui governors, with staff from both organisations to review the joint management agreement, and extending the scope was one of the things that was identified throughout that process. And so we are now getting to the point in the joint management agreement review process where we are presenting options for the review process. This specific matter was discussed at the most recent co-governance committee and will be discussed again at the co-governance meeting next week. And as advised yesterday, we will be having a council workshop to bring all councillors that haven't had first-hand involvement in the JMA review process to date up to speed. Council will make formal decisions on any amendments to these agreements at the end of June. That's where that's the plan in terms of the time frame. So I guess the point to make and to end with is that council will be making decisions ultimately about what is within a reviewed joint management agreement, as will Waikato Tainui, because I must stress that it is a joint document. So both organisations respectively must agree to anything that is amended within the agreement.
Thank you. And supplementary, just to you, will that will that workshop be open, or will it be public excluded to the submitters or the deputation comments and to Councillor Hughes' comments? Will that be open or
I don't know if that's been determined.
In the agenda that was published last night for the co-governance committee next week, you might notice, although you might not have gotten into the detail of the agenda just yet, but staff are recommending that decisions in detail are reported into open. This will allow for council then to have an open conversation around the review. And so I anticipate that that workshop will be open to the public.
Thank you.
Brief comment is just that agenda is out now for all councillors to see. I would encourage all councillors who have a real interest in this and haven't been part of it in depth, unlike the members, to read it and raise any concerns before the JMA meeting with any of the members, myself, Noel, Tippa, Pamela, so that we can represent and bring up front as much as possible when we're sitting in the JMA. I know you're the alternate, Noel, but you've been part of the process. Bruce has been there as well. Thank you. So just bring it up beforehand so that we can have that discussion there, so that we don't end up in the workshop raising new things that we then have no idea how that might be, because we can talk about that. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Marr.
Yes, sorry, I missed the, I believe you've passed the minutes of the council meeting held back on the 30th of April, which I didn't attend, but my understanding was there was a foreshadow motion or there was an item laying on the table. Is that correct or not?
We have already passed those minutes.
Yeah, and I understand.
And I've got a mover and seconder on this one. So can we close this off? Can we close this off?
Yeah, yep, sure.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Now your point?
That my understanding is reading there was a foreshadowed motion in that council meeting minutes, and I couldn't see where it had been. It's been signed off. Yep. Yep. The workshop.
Yep, I moved, Chris seconded,
Okay.
and we went down that process.
Thank you.
Is that clarified?
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. All right. So, yes, we have. Have we put that? Yeah, we did. Yes, we did. I closed that off before. All right, thank you. All right, health and safety. So this is on page 92 of your agenda, tax councillors. And we have Mr. Stu Brown to speak to this. Welcome, Stu.
Thank you. Good morning, councillors. I want you to a few points of interest through the report. You'll see under the national events that on the 27th of February 2023, sadly, a worker suffered some amputation of 2 fingers who were working for Claymark at the time. And unfortunately, Claymark failed to ensure that the health and safety of its workers was properly taken due to basically insufficient guarding. They have decided to take an enforceable undertaking to mitigate some of the issues there. That's the second of those that you'll have seen in recent reports. And it's really just to draw your attention to what we do in council in that regard. And you'll see there that we ensure that there is sufficient guarding on machinery and routine maintenance and training to ensure that people are competent to operate whichever piece of machinery that they're utilising at that time. It's also important to note that we follow robust procurement processes to ensure that we do purchase correct equipment and machinery, and that when we do take that on, that we don't tamper with that manufactured guards that are on that. And you'll see under the national event, health and safety reform, this is coming from the government that kind of, with their planned health and safety changes. We had some good discussion at the due diligence workshop that you all attended on this. So I just wanted to note that again in the report, and I'll keep you abreast of any changes as they come. As we move through, you'll see that there were 4 health and safety walkarounds from the executive leadership team for the month of April. I discussed one of those relating to the Te Araha entrance in the last meeting, and you'll see that Phil King has had a couple and Greg Ryan. So they have been out in the organisation and feeding back what they have observed there for you. We have completed a review of the critical risks relating, or the risk relating to geothermal. That's been a comprehensive review, as they all are, engaging health and safety business partners, health and safety representatives, subject matter experts from across the organisation. And you'll see that the controls and the statements that have been updated there in relation to the geothermal critical risk. And we've also provided more enhanced training to provide more in-depth understanding of that risk. And then finally, just the Safeguard State of the Nation survey results. You'll see those have come back with a slight decline in the perception of health and safety in New Zealand, and WorkSafe as being the regular still viewed reasonably poorly at 18%. I have to say our interaction with them, while it has been limited, has been positive here. Thank you.
Any questions from councillors in regard to the health and safety report? Councillor Nicol.
Not so much a question, but good report, thanks, and really appreciated the due diligence workshop the other day.
Thank you.
Like noting there's quite a bit of discussion.
It was great engagement. Thank you.
Happy to move if you want.
Great. I've got a, sorry, Councillor Mahuta.
I'm happy to second, but I've got a question about the bus drivers.
Certainly.
Going to keep asking it. No, because an incident was reported in local papers where some harm came to a passenger out in Ragland, and I just wanted to know what was, what are they trained to de-escalate in? What are their safe and health and safety provision for the driver themselves? And I guess what are we meant to be monitoring as the PCBU? Kia ora.
Thank you. Yeah, we've been working closely with the bus providers and ensuring that they do have de-escalation training provided for the drivers. We have also supported them in the training to deal with people with mental health issues as well, as we have seen that that's on the rise. You know, that sort of those verbal and physical abuse items that are coming across often have a mental health element. So the drivers have comprehensive training in that space. Obviously, people are human, and when these things arise, sometimes the training doesn't come to mind, and we have issues there. But on the whole, things are going well in that space. I did speak previously regarding engaging the police to ensure that we're collecting all of the incidents that happen across the services that we provide. I think historically, how the reporting has been captured has meant that with the number of drop downs that the police have, they're not getting the whole picture. So we've been working quite closely with them and the providers to ensure that we're comprehensively reporting all the incidents so that we can get a better picture of what's going on out there, and then look to gain that support potentially from the police to enable us to better respond.
Just as the representative PCBU, is there more that we should be doing in terms of governing this matter?
Not at this stage, no. I'm comfortable with where we are with this. Thank you.
Kia ora, happy to.
Councillor Cookson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's most probably not, it's nothing to do with the report, but mine is something outside, just like Tipper's one was then, but mine's just well-being of staff going through this review by CM, and staff are having to do submissions for their new roles at the moment, and I'm questioning the support that some of those staff have been getting is up to what's required emotionally and in the environment that they're in, that they're not getting the right support. So I'll just put that on the table. I'm not looking for an answer. I just hope management take that on board. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, we've got a mover and a seconder to receive the report. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, we'll move to item 7.2. This is in relation to the HUIA Sunday services. And we have Brian Sherritt and Joe Gascoigne. Welcome.
Kia ora koutou katoa. Through the chair, we would like to table the HUIA Sunday service report as read and provide a short summary to you all. We are proposing to introduce a Sunday return service on HUIA passenger rail and are seeking a decision for the reallocation of HUIA reserve funding to support this new service. HUIA customer satisfaction surveys undertaken annually have consistently shown demand for a Sunday service. The introduction of this would round out weekend travel for visitors to both Hamilton and Auckland City, as well as enabling tertiary students to travel home from university for the weekend and commuters to get a head start on the week ahead. It's also an opportunity for travel to special events in either city, tourism, hospitality and retail. The service on Sunday also provides a vital connection to the airport for travellers, either international or domestic. This would round out the service as a rail service to 7 days a week. We're currently at 6 days a week. So staff attended the Auckland and National Timetable Committee meetings in May and requested scheduled time slots. At these meetings, we requested approval of one return service time slot on Sunday, departing around 3 p.m. from Frankton Station in Hamilton, and a return departing around 6 p.m. from the Strand in Auckland. WRC staff have received approval from Auckland Timetable Committee, but are awaiting final consideration from the National Timetable Committee. On the 16th of May, the Future Proof Public Transport Subcommittee approved the Sunday service pending the National Timetable Committee final consideration. This final consideration, this is the decision, is, the final decisions on running the service lies with KiwiRail, who are not only our contractor, but separately as the owner of the rail network. The factors regarding this decision relate to their weekly engineering window, which occurs every Sunday to undertake track maintenance. Consideration of our request has been escalated within KiwiRail, and we anticipate a decision will be made within the next 2 weeks. Brian, would you like to get to that?
All right, I just need to get a light for Ryan. So.
Yes, thank you, Joe. Just a couple of comments from me, and just reiterating what Joe has said. Whilst we are seeking the reallocation of the Te Hui Reserve Fund today for the Sunday service, we are still waiting on KiwiRail for that access to the track. Just in terms of there's a rates issue here, I think, as well, that we should be talking about. So the Te Hui Reserve is from targeted rates, and targeted rates can be used to fund services. They are not used for things that the general rate is funded for, provides for, which is funding for business cases and those sort of things. So this is actually about service delivery. In terms of the numbers, so we've looked at the Te Hui Reserve Fund, and we've done some sort of modelling around the reserve for this Sunday service, taking into account a range of factors like the drop in the FAR rate from NZTA, changes to the Super Gold fares, the fare increases that we've put in place, and I guess higher patronage than we originally had modelled as well. And the fact that the service was, the Te Huia service had been delayed by COVID, and we've also had a significant amount of blockages of line in the Auckland region in terms of not being able to run the service. So what that means is that gives us the capacity in the reserve to fund this service. In terms of the estimated cost of the service, that's been sourced from our provider, which is KiwiRail, and represents the cost to run the Sunday service and is made up of a range of fixed and variable costs. One thing I wanted to just mention is that there is an anomaly, I think, in the report in paragraph 19, where we state that we had sought a 50% funding contribution from Auckland Council, and the number that we've quoted there, 223, is the number that we asked for, but it's not actually 50% of the direct cost. It's slightly less than that, so it's about $5,000 short of what it should have been. So just owning that discrepancy in the report. And one final comment from me, the reason that this is important is that we are heading into an end of trial review for the service, so the 5-year trial ends, and we are looking to optimise the patronage rates of the service, so that when we go into the end of trial review and present that to the NZTA board, we give them the very best view of the service that we possibly can. So I'll stop there, Madam Chair, and questions and discussion.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you. So thank you for the report. When I read the report, and based on the figures presented, you've got 900,000 and 359 expense. So you'll have a reserve of just over $561,000. So I was going to ask about the use of the surplus rates to fund the business case. You've commented that it's a targeted rate. The pool must also include fares and the like. So is there any way in which the use of that reserve, because I don't see any reason why we have to have a reserve left over. That would be rather silly. If you're going to try and get the service to the maximum, why wouldn't you be utilising the fees or the income that's come directly from the train to support the business case? So can we just dig into that, the use of that money a little bit more, please? And in principle, I don't have a problem with having a Sunday service. It's just if there's another way of funding it rather than using surplus, council surplus, as opposed to targeted reserve that seems to be directed to the train. So can we just have a bit more on that, please?
Right.
Whether you or whether it's Janine or who.
So if I'm hearing correctly, it's that the surplus that we're talking about to utilize with the Sunday service is targeted rates collected for the HUIA, as opposed to the policy or the business cases that are policy that are funded through general rates. Sorry, I'm trying to understand your question.
Yeah, no, so you've just made a comment that it's targeted rates, but is that 920,000 all targeted rates, or is there farebox money that isn't targeted? So could that money be used? What I'm looking at is options where the money's come from within the Te Huia service to fund that business case.
So through the chair, if I can understand you're saying that should we be using fair revenue to fund business cases?
If there's income that's not targeted rates, because you can only use it for the purpose of which it's been collected, I understand that. But if there is other income that is contributed to that surplus and can be identified, why are we not using that train-derived income rather than a general rate surplus coming from prior year surplus? So, because I'd like to move in that direction.
Okay,
if there's an answer. Well, no,
So
can I have an answer?
I've got,
Okay.
I'm just trying to get a mic for
thank you.
Janine, and I just wanted to make sure I had a note of the speaking order. Thank you.
I hope I'm clear on what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
yeah, I do understand that. So through the chair, the approach that we're taking is consistent with the way that we treat all of our reserve funding, which is taking the complete funding mix for that service into the reserve, so that when we draw it back out again, we're consistent with that funding mix. So it's a little bit like when we think about our scheme reserves, that's not all just targeted rate funding, there's general rate funding in there as well. But it's in line with the way that those activities are funded. So if we took fair revenue out of the reserve, then the spend is not actually in line with our funding policies. So we're just trying to be really clear in terms of what activity we fund and how, and keep the mix of that funding in line with our policies in doing so.
I'm looking at it as a jar of jelly beans, and say all the yellow ones are the fare box, and take the yellow ones out to pay for the business case.
We don't operate our reserves that way. They are attached to an activity which has a funding policy associated with it. And so the use of the reserves should preserve that funding mix.
So it's a funding policy rather than just trying to find a way to use money that's tied to a train. Okay, thank
correct.
you.
Councillor Mahuta.
Kia ora, thank you for the opportunity to speak to this option. So, and thinking about the recommendation, was any other utilisation considered or just Sunday? Because I just want to be able to say this is why. And then if it's Sunday, I know for the purposes of my community, it would be to spend a day in Auckland, not 3 hours. So just trying to figure out when would that be extended, because I know we don't want to do a 3-hour one day, I'm assuming. And then in the last one, it's proof of case. When should we see, from your experience, that Sunday has had an uplift, and when will we see that, so that we don't ask you every week for something that you can't show for 3 months? Because again, I'm pro-train. I just want to make sure that we're making it more accessible, not boutique accessible.
Through the chair. So this is there is no other Sunday service, so it's one service. So we're looking at how the service would function, I guess, across the weekend and how it would support those that wanted to travel to Auckland before the start of the work or the school week or university week, if you like. So that was the context around that. Sorry, I'm not sure I've forgotten the rest of your questions. I apologise.
And on that being the choice, not another offering other in the week, how do you determine that was the appropriate one? I get that people are returning to Auckland, but I'm saying for my constituency, a day in Auckland would be more viable. So wanting, when will we know that could be broadened to meet a wider target? And then when would we know that Sundays are working?
Yeah, sorry. So look, in terms of how we've gone through that, this is probably the next best thing we could do to actually promote patronage growth. That's where that's come from. There's a range of options that we could have targeted with this, including things like an additional service on the Wednesday potentially, because we've got 3 services on Thursday, Friday, and we could have done another part of the week. But we think that this actually will give us the biggest return for our investment on that type of thing. The data, I guess, should be. Well, it'll be really evident as part of the end of trial review, but we should know, relatively soon, I guess, how that data stacks up in terms of what the patronage levels are. Noting, of course, that when the initial starts, it won't be high, but it will build over time. That's how it typically works. Yes, so I think that would be broadly what we're talking about here, but we want this to be up and running for the end of trial review. So we actually are optimising and maximising the level of patronage on the service to the best levels that we can.
Councillor Hughes.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Brian, thanks for that report. I just got some interest. Councillor Smith's covered one of the issues that I had, but the other one is the costs that you've quoted, estimated direct costs from KiwiRail of $456,000 for the service. I'm referring to a report that Phil provided to me to the end of April. So the cost per passenger in this report that you've tabled today is $34.14. Year to date, the cost is $97.91. So I'd like to understand why there is a difference between the estimated cost for this service, $456, as against the cost per passenger on the year to date. Is there a different rate being charged by KiwiRail or something for the Sunday service? Like I would have expected it to be more expensive. But I don't know.
So there's a range of things that were built into that sort of estimated direct cost, and it is not as simple as actually just sort of looking at what we've done through the week and applying that to the weekend. It's a different arrangement. So we've sought those figures from KiwiRail, and that's what's come back to us. I take your point though that we should and we have done our due diligence around looking at that and trying to work through to make sure that actually is what the cost actually is, and we're not being overcharged for that service. So it is a different thing.
I find it astounding that the rate can go from $97.91 during the week to $34.14 on Sunday. It just doesn't make sense.
You're saying it's cheaper per passenger on the weekend?
Well, that's what the numbers tell me. I don't know. Is that number they've given you a written quote for Sunday service?
We have that data from that information from KiwiRail, yes.
So we can put a hand on our heart and say that's what it's going to cost.
That's what they are estimating the cost to be. That's right, yes.
Doesn't make sense. Anyway, I'd like to see the figures when they come through if we can, please.
Councillor Dunbar-Smith.
Yeah, I was just going to ask about the surplus of 920,000 if we didn't go ahead with the service. Come March 2026, if there's a decision to not provide government funding and we decide not to move forward, what happens to that 920,000?
I'm wondering that's a question for you, Janine.
Why don't you just stay there for the rest of this discussion, Janine?
Seats warmed up now. So through the chair, in terms of what would happen to that reserve, effectively that is funding that has been collected from Hamilton City ratepayers for the service. So it would be a decision that came back to council of what you did with that. I think given we have a different transport reserve from a bus service perspective that is also collected from Hamilton City ratepayers, you may consider folding those two together if Te Huia was no longer continuing. You've collected the money from the same ratepayer group. The services are different but aligned, but that would be a decision that would come to you for consideration.
And if it's a targeted rate for the functioning of the train, is there any way of varying the targeted rate so that the continued functioning of the train through a business case is something that can be considered?
Yes, and through the chair, if we go back to the decisions that you made through deliberations on your long-term plan, that rating and funding of the service was noted as one of those things that we would need to come back to once certainty over the future of the service was confirmed.
But not now.
Not now, no. That would the process to do that would have needed to have been through this annual plan or through the LTP. What we'd done through the LTP was acknowledge the change in the funding assistance rate from NZTA, which was obviously reliant on drawing down on the reserve funds that we had in place at that point in time. But pending the review of the service, the business case work that is underway, as part of the future of Te Huia, there is the opportunity to consider how that would be funded.
So if we'd known about the $900,000 at the beginning of the annual plan process, we could have actually consulted about whether people wanted to use that towards a business case.
I come back to the point in terms of the business case being considered as part of the transport policy program, which is funded through the general rate, not through a targeted rate policy.
Councillor Graf.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Look, so there's approximately 210 fares per Sunday, is that right? Can you hear me?
Yeah. Can you repeat the question?
Oh, okay, sure. There's approximately 210 patrons per Sunday, is that correct? Expected? Is my microphone not working?
Right, there is no current service, but that's what the estimated patronage would indicate. So that number there is for a year, and if you divide that by 52, you'd sort of get the round sort of numbers, I think, of what the expected patronage might be.
Yes,
I should also
yes.
stress that it is a conservative estimate.
Yeah, so that's the figure I get here. And so, for example, if it's the same 210 people every Sunday, that's an annual subsidy of 1,700 odd for each person per year. How do you prevent, or how do you ensure people who have not been on the train before can get onto the train, as opposed to ones that use it every Sunday?
So there is promotion of the service that we're talking about. So making sure that people who don't use the service are aware of the service. So that's the thing that we're looking at quite seriously and pushing that. So and I would say, having been a frequent user of Te Huia, it's rare, I guess, that you have the same people on the train every day, sort of thing, if that makes sense. So there are those that commute during the week, but my experience has been that those that use it at other times for other purposes than commuting to work are a really varied group. So I think there's an opportunity there for us to be really promoting the service, and particularly that Sunday service now. So what it will do is it will give you opportunities to go to events and stay overnight in Auckland, but also for Aucklanders to do the same thing in Hamilton and be back before the end of the weekend, if that makes sense.
And so is it currently around $10 per ticket?
The full fare for for on the Te Huia is $21.60 per trip. That's the full trip from Frankton to the Strand. But of course, people don't always go all that way, so some of the fares are less. And plus, you've also got another range of concessions and those sort of things. So that's why if you divide
Yeah, I'm looking at the fare revenue,
yeah, the patronage by the fare revenue, you get that number that I think you're looking at.
Yep, and then there's a subsidy of about $34 to cover the cost of each person. Okay, yeah, it's costly, isn't it? It's costly. Okay, thanks for that.
Councillor Nicol.
Thanks, both. Having read from the last time we consulted on Te Huia in the long-term plan last traineum, and having read the hundreds of submissions, so many times Sunday was mentioned, and just want to commend Lindsay Horn from the Future is Rail. She emailed us, a few of us yesterday, and I just forwarded on to the councillors, that she has also noted that some passengers from Auckland, if they were to do a day trip, would have a really limited time in Hamilton. I'm raising that, like 2 hours kind of thing. And I'm just raising that because I'm trying to keep front of mind always that getting some contribution from Auckland Council is obviously quite vital. And I think most of us were surprised and disappointed that with their recent annual plan, there wasn't more of an opportunity to talk about that with them, but obviously we'll be trying again. I'm just thinking the Sunday trip will really allow Aucklanders to have a great experience in the Waikato, especially for the weekend. Because while it was set up as a commuter thing, it feels like from the anecdotal evidence that it's a leisure activity of travelling, especially for the older and with very young children, that's really given it such a great patronage growth. So I'm just really hopeful that this will be a game changer. One of the questions I've got is, do you foresee there being time to come to us to refine, if anything, like say if the Sunday service was so popular that we were starting to leave people behind effectively, that we could still refine things, or do you think the time frame's now getting a bit tight with the 5-yearly review data? Noting you mentioned to Councillor Mahuta that the be in the next quarter that we get some solid data of how effective this is.
Yeah, look, I guess we're always looking to optimise the service, so and utilising all of the resources we've got to maximise the levels of patronage. So today we're talking about the Sunday service, but look, there may be other things that we come to you with in the near future as well. But this is what we're talking about today, and we think it's a really important addition to the service offering of the train. And as you say, it will promote or give the opportunity for people to come to Hamilton from Auckland and vice versa, and spend a night in the weekend in each city. So that I think is an important element as well.
No, also,
hopefully I've answered your question.
Yeah, definitely. And I recall one of the discussions in the Future-Proof Public Transport Subcommittee that it would also be quite interesting to understand whether travelling from Frankton to Pukekohe would be enough for some rather than the whole way. So it'd be really interesting whether if we did have hold-ups, whether people could utilise both the Auckland network or from the Strand to get back home. I'm really happy to move the motion, and hopefully somebody will second that. And just want to note the unanimous support that we got in the Future-Proof Public Transport Subcommittee, made up of Waipa, Waikato, Hamilton and Matamata Piako Council representatives, who are all super excited and supportive of this move. So,
No.
All right, I do have a mover. Do I have a second? I have a second and Councillor Strange. I've got Councillor Marr, Councillor Smith, and then Councillor Strange. Councillor Marr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, a few questions from me. Is there any government support at all? Obviously, they support the weekday services through at a percentage. Is there any Can we look for government support for this extra service, or is that being outside the trial?
So the proposal at the moment that we're talking about is it to be funded through the rates. And my understanding is there's no NZTA support for this service at this particular time.
Okay.
So,
Would the Gold Card have the ability to use that service?
Yes, they do. There was some changes in relation to the use of the
It's out of peak.
Gold Card, so it's out of peak, so that gives them that advantage. That's correct, yes. That's some of the concessions that I was referring to earlier.
Have you thought around advertising this new service? Obviously, there's going to be a cost involved in that. Is that something Kiwi Rail picks up, or is that something?
It's something we are looking to promote the service to make sure people are aware of it. So as I mentioned earlier, you want people who are not using the train to actually see that as a viable option, and that's what we're trying to do.
And lastly, I got a copy of the submission that went to the Auckland Council. Being blunt, I thought it was quite poor. In all respects, it didn't really sing the praises. There were no figures behind it apart from the fact that this is what the estimated cost is, and we want half, and just under half, as you alluded to. I think it could have been done way better to bring them at least along for the ride. Excuse the pun, but I'll leave that there. So thank you.
Thank you.
Love a good pun. Love it. Yeah, Councillor Smith.
Thank you. Probably to the Chief Executive, going back to my earlier point, can you clarify, Councillor is the sole decision maker when it comes to policy and the likes, in my view. So the finance director has alluded to policy that may prevent doing certain things. With the view that I'm holding at the moment, that council is the ultimate decision maker, and if it decides to suspend or vary a policy for the purpose of an action, is that feasible insofar as going back to the point of utilising what's looking like a large reserve and potential to build up further if anything goes wrong with hold-ups and whatever. So can we give us some advice on the use through way of resolution to override a policy?
Thank you, Councillor Smith. If I understand your question, you're asking, is it possible for council to change the funding policy so that rates could be, have been collected for a specific purpose, could be used for a different purpose?
Yeah, so override it, suspend it, or whatever.
I'll refer that to Janine, and maybe there's probably a question of when things are significant as well, and whether there need to be
a few hundred thousand
consultation. But I'll just refer that to Janine.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. So through the chair, to change the revenue and financing policy of council would be technically an amendment to your long-term plan. It is one of the policies that requires due process across it in terms of how it's determined and how it's applied. So that is one of those policies that needs to go through a long-term plan process, which we did. I appreciate the position that council finds itself in now of having this request in front of them, where only last week they signed off an annual plan. I think the funding of the business case preparation was discussed as part of that process, but that was in the absence of this information in terms of the reserve position. But I come back to the first point, to change your revenue and financing policy is an amendment to your long-term plan.
So another thing that I'd recommend that council looks at is being a little bit more nimble in its policies. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Councillor Strange.
Yeah, thank you. Just to Councillor Smith's points, I suppose consistency across the board with all targeted rates and general rates funding would also fall under the same nimbleness and policy as well. Yeah, thank you, staff, for your presentation. Ever since the inception of Te HUIA, Sunday services are what our public have been and community have been calling for. So I'm really excited to have this here today. You mentioned in your report about increased patronage and increased fare revenue in creating this surplus. Given all the early criticism around Te HUIA, then that sounds like a pretty positive problem to have. I note that quite a few people have already spoken. So I just wanted to follow up on Councillor Ma's comments around communication and promoting the service as well. So, calling at 5 stations to 5 different communities along the way. There's plenty of different users out there, current non-users as well. And especially highlighting the Auckland Airport connection as well, I think is really important. At our FPIC PT subcommittee, we had the full support of all the partner councils. And there's been numerous news articles as well around the current usage of Te HUIA and what it could enable, as well as extensions as well. So us doing our incremental increases and improvements across the whole 4-year journey so far, I think is really proving that test case. And so taking the Sunday service now and showing what it can enable builds into the whole case of interregional rail as well. So at the moment, we're connecting Waikato and Auckland, but there's been numerous things in the media about going further south through Te Kuiti and on to Wellington, and also going east as well, over to Bay of Plenty. So just wanted to keep those conversations alive as well. I just had a question around the surplus, and we've heard some cases of using it to fund the business case. But just wanted to also, maybe not right now, but maybe have staff come back, some other recommendations of, you mentioned the Wednesday, maybe adding an additional trip in. Just wondered, I know that through the business cases, we are exploring other options as well. And Councillor Nicol mentioned one before about Hamilton to Pukekohe and back. Just sort of wondering if we could explore those options as well, a bit of a test case for, giving people the option to use it in a different way. Yeah. So not really a question, but more of a maybe something to come back in the future, very, very short-term future. Happy to second it. Thank you.
Nice. All right, we have a mover and a seconder. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much for that. Much appreciated. Look forward to people coming down for the weekend, going up for the weekend. Look forward to the numbers.
Madam Chair,
All right.
could I just
Sorry?
say something on the end of that? It's more about reserves. I'd actually like to know, at some stage, I'd like to know all reserves and all slush funds that are held in this council. Because every time we spend, well, that feels like a slush fund at times. The surplus that turns up, because
Reserves, yeah.
I feel at times that all of a sudden things get done because money gets found. And I think it's time for that all reserves and surpluses are known to the council, and not they just turn up when required to get a project on to happen. So I'm just
Noted. Chief
Look,
Executive.
my comment is that we do report through the Finance and Services Committee on about where council's position is, including with reserves of council, and that information is available to all council.
And if
Thank you. All right, I do want to move on. Okay.
I just appreciated Councillor Hughes's question before about the numbers on Sundays versus the week, if that could be shared. Once you know the answer.
Thank you.
Can I just clarification what the Chief Executive, is it reported by line item as each reserve, or is it just a bulk amount?
So through the chair, at the bottom of our financial statements, we show our reserve balances.
Each reserve?
Zone reserves are amalgamated, but look, I accept the feedback. I normally, through our planning processes in particular, provide information reserve by reserve of what the projected balance in those accounts is as you're setting your budget, so that that can actually be taken into consideration. I think it is an area where we can enhance reporting and visibility.
Perhaps an updated one could be sent out to us all.
All right.
I just, Tipa's before me, I think.
Oh, no, you're on this matter? I'm on
Yeah.
one.
I just think they need to be careful with too, Robbie, because some of those reserves are deliberately maintained, as you well know. So we need to make sure the way they're reported is reflects the purpose of them.
100%. I mean, it's got to be quantified what they're for, and when we have a complete understanding of every single reserve.
All right. Item 7.3. This is, sorry.
That's why I've been waiting.
No,
But
please.
I think Chris is still
Wait
on
a
the
minute.
previous matter.
Wait a minute. I need to understand who's moving on to 7.3, which is what I'd like to do.
I just want to comment, if I may, as Chair of Finance on that last point, because I think it's a very good valid point. And I'd like to suggest, as is normal procedure when you've got funds put aside like that, that they be presented in our reports, maybe each quarter, and also the tags as to what conditions apply to the reserve and its release. So I'll make sure that happens.
Thank you for the follow-up, Chris.
All right.
The holding to move this, that's why I'm lining up.
All right. So this is approval of changes to the CoLab Constitution.
Yes, but I had a question to the paper. In leaving it open, it goes against best practice, which in the public sector is either 5 or 2 consecutive terms of 5 years. So leaving it wide open doesn't have that discipline in terms of no end date. I get that we've breached the current 6, but the public sector best practice is either 2 terms of 5, total of 10. I'm trying to figure out how we meet that.
Yeah, appreciate that. Agree.
Hey, gone are the days where someone can stay until they die. So I'm just
That's
trying
something I'm keen to
We could
avoid.
put that
Yeah.
feedback through.
Yeah, so, yes.
I just want to
so-
get some good.
Yes, yeah, so through the
handlebars.
chair, I guess the position is as per the board recommendation, but this is the opportunity for council to consider that. I guess in the report I have provided the RSHL constitution as well, which limits it to 12 years unless unanimously agreed by shareholders, which, you know.
I don't want you to redraft it. I'm just saying if we set that framework for the maximum term and it come back. Yeah. Thank you.
We'll provide that back to CoLab.
Thank you.
All right. With those notes, we've got a mover and a seconder. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right. We are going to move into PACs and then we are going to take a break. I've got a mover and Councillor Smith and a second and Councillor Mahuta. All those in favor? Sorry? Oh, sorry. Yeah. All right, sorry. I've got a mover and Councillor Smith and a second and Councillor Hodge. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Yeah. Yes, we are adjourning for 10 minutes. All right, I'm keen to get going.